It's just me doing a cultural reference for viewers over a certain age. Oh, how thing squashes your head. Right, it's Sunday. Sorry about that. It worked in my head. We better have a story, haven't we? So, tonight's story, it's quite personal. It deals with something that is a genuine a trigger for me, and a genuine fear, and it inspires horror in the deepest part of my soul, honestly. Because tonight's story deals with Reader's Digest condensed books. Something a bit different tonight. It's called Hell's Bells, and it's by Harry Turner. Actually being dead wasn't as painful as Septimus Throgmorton Duff had imagined it would be. Dying itself, of course, was pretty nasty. Nobody with any respect for truth could pretend that getting thumped against a brick wall by an E-type was a fun thing to happen. It was thoroughly unfunny, in fact, and painful too. At the moment of death, he knew that hell was his final destination. No other place could possibly take him after his life on earth. Of that, he was quite certain. Septimus Throgmorton Duff had been a thoroughly bad lot. Blasphemer, swindler, thief. This, in a mild sort of way, his victims usually being British Rail, WH Smith's and Tesco Supermarkets Limited. So the prospect of hell came as no surprise to him. Indeed, it filled him with a morbid curiosity. Seconds after the E-type had severed him from his mortal coil, he found himself in limbo, a sort of disembodied waiting room, situated nowhere in particular. Thin, wispy clouds scudded about his feet, and dirge-like singing echoed tantalisingly in the background. He sat uncomfortably on a tubular steel chair, surveying with cool disinterest a pile of last year's Punch magazines. In all, it was not unlike a visit to the dentist's. After a couple of hours, a door, which Septimus had not previously noticed, sprang open, and through it emerged a fussy little man in a white nightshirt carrying a clipboard and pencil. "Mr. Septimus Throgmorton Duff?" he intoned. "Yep," said Septimus. "I am he. You'll have to wait another hour. Hell is very busy at the moment. The governor seems to be sending everybody here these days. It's driving me frantic, I can tell you." "Oh," said Septimus, in what he hoped was a sympathetic tone. "Yes," said the little man. "Frantic. Now sit still and behave yourself. When you're ready for you, they'll ring a bell and flash a red light above that door." He pointed with his pencil dramatically. "That's when your worries really start. Cheerio now, mustache. Got to catch up on my clerking." And then he was gone, in a puff of cloud. Hell, thought Septimus, at last. I wonder what it's actually like. Pits of acid, perhaps, with tortured souls writhing in pain. Long tongues of flame scorching and searing the flesh of the damned. Moaning and weeping, the crack of the devil's whip, the stench of brimstone and sulphur, Ghastly implements of torture. Thumbscrews, racks, all the nasty hardware of the Middle Ages sharpened and oiled to inflict agony for evermore, non-stop. Big hooks, perhaps, dangling on endless chains from which the victims hang by their skewered bellies, like that chap in Madame Tussauds. There might even be red-hot coals, against which your naked flesh sizzles like barbecued sausages at a beach jamboree. Poisonous snakes puncturing your throat every 5 minutes and making you swell up like a balloon. Hairy spiders, as big as footballs, crawling over your face 24 hours a day. Constipation, pimples, earache, nosebleeds, double vision, and chilblains. Pretty ghastly on the whole. More or less to be expected, though. He glanced at his watch. Time was not dragging as he feared it might. Only 10 minutes to go. He straightened his tie and combed his hair. Not long now before the searing pain and relentless screaming began. Just a few more minutes in the little waiting room, then pow! The red light flashed and a bell pealed solemnly. Septimus stood up and braced himself. Slowly, the door opened. Beyond, it was dark and silent. He walked steadily towards it, his footsteps ringing on the stone. Seconds more, he thought, and I'll see it. A short staircase covered in tufted carpet led down into hell. There was no fire, no smoke, and no anguished howling. Hell, as far as he could judge, consisted of a small square room with book-lined walls, a record player, and a couple of comfortable sofas. Over the tiled fireplace hung a print of a Chinese woman with a green face. Curious, Septimus moved quickly to the bookshelves and took down one of the volumes. It was a bound edition of the Reader's Digest. He replaced it and took another. This too was a bound edition of the Reader's Digest, and the next, and the next. Septimus took a pace back and groaned. Nothing to read for the whole of eternity except the Reader's Digest. What absolute He checked himself and grinned. Music, he suddenly decided. That might be the answer. The music of hell, something Wagnerian and heroic. He switched on the record player and watched the unlabelled disc fall onto the turntable. And now, an American voice said on the record, 16 hours of non-stop entertainment from The Sound of Music. Septimus seized the disc and reversed it savagely. Sit back, folks, said the same American voice, and enjoy 11 hours of the wit of Tony Blackburn. Septimus switched off the record player and flung himself onto the sofa. Almost immediately, a thin, stooping man of about 45 materialised on the far side of the room. He wore the bland, unfashionable clothes of a provincial grocer and carried a copy of a prominent do-it-yourself magazine. Nice weather for this time of year, he remarked in a Midlands accent. I can't do a Midlands accent. Septimus glared sullenly. Mustn't grumble, the grocer went on, smiling benignly. Anyway, a bit of rain does the garden good. Septimus pretended not to hear and looked away. It's colder than last Tuesday, said the grocer. But there you are. Can't complain, really. 'Cause it could be worse. It's warmer than last Friday fortnight. And it might be warmer than next Friday. It's been a pretty average summer. Mustn't grumble, mustn't complain. If it's not one thing, it's the other. Well, I must be off. Be good. And if you can't be good, be careful. And he vanished in a plume of smoke that smelt faintly of ledgers and bacon. "Ugh," commented Septimus, and opened a small cocktail cabinet that had sprung up by his right elbow. Inside, jam-packed under pink strip lighting, were countless bottles of Babycham. A hidden tape played Greensleeves discreetly in the background. Septimus recoiled in horror and tried the larder door, which by chance had appeared in the wall by the fireplace. It was bursting at the seams with individual fruit pies and jumbo-sized packets of fish fingers. Covering his face with his hands, Septimus withdrew to the far corner of the room. A trapdoor sprang open, and up popped a middle-aged American tourist with blue-rinsed hair, Bermuda shorts, and 7 assorted cameras. "And now," said the voice from the record player, "Mrs. Mamie Washington will show you her 8,500 photographs of Paris, France, and follow this treat with a 3-day symposium on varicose veins, their cause, effect, and cure." Septimus howled in anguish and tried to crawl under the sofa. A hand fell on his shoulder, and he turned to meet the gaze of an imposing gentleman with a pointed beard, horns, a tail, and a 3-pronged trident. "Are you the devil?" gasped Septimus. The devil nodded. "That's right, dear, so watch your lip." "Does it go on like this forever?" moaned Septimus in a pleading voice. The devil placed a slender hand on his hip and grinned. "Gets worse, dear. Never mind about going on like this forever." "Worse?" he said. It can't do." "Oh, but it does," said the devil. "Tomorrow, when you wake up, you will be a traffic warden in Barnsley, with constipation. That'll last for about 6,000 years. By then, we'll have thought up something else for you." Septimus collapsed weakly on the sofa. "But that's ridiculous," he protested. "Aren't you going to roast me in sulphur or flay me with red-hot chains?" "Gracious me, no," said the devil, polishing the prongs of his trident with a little silk hanky. Well, I think it's an absolute fraud," grumbled Septimus. "It's nothing like I expected." The devil smiled. "It's nothing like anybody expects it to be, but it's hell all right. Believe you me, dear." "And it's so small," continued Septimus. "Just this tiny room." The devil sniffed enigmatically. "This room is just one of many. We have rooms to suit everybody who comes down here. In fact, they have exactly the same type of rooms up there too." He pointed towards the ceiling with his trident. "In heaven?" gasped Septimus. "You must be joking." "Not at all," replied the devil. "This little room is hell for you, dearie. Absolute bloody hell. And yours is for eternity. Up there, the identical room would be somebody else's idea of heaven." Septimus closed his eyes and groaned again. The devil turned swiftly towards the fireplace. "Bye now," he said over his shoulder. "Have fun," and then vanished up the chimney. Septimus sat humbly for a few minutes, and then went across to the bookshelf. He took down a volume of Reader's Digest stories and returned to the sofa. He turned the first page. How a Vladivostok crane driver overcame pimples. A celestial choir sprang up in the background, belting out the first verse of I Could Have Danced All Night. Well, it's one vision of hell, isn't it? I think I could probably cope with the fish fingers, though. As long as there was a bit of tartar sauce to go with them. Well, thank you for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're all staying safe and well and sane and look after yourselves. And I will see you guys next Sunday at 8 o'clock.